In this short-isode of Elton Reads a Book a Week, we're going deep, or not, on the states, the united ones, not the 36 states and one capital territory of Nigeria, or not even the 31 states of, estados, and federal capital district of Mexico. We're not doing that either, or even the 28 states, or Pradesh, 8 union territories and 25 autonomous administrative divisions of India. Nope, not talking about them either. We're talking about the United States, states of the United States, and in particular their nicknames. Yeah, I bet you didn't see that coming.
Reads a book a week, Short-isode!
A new chapter in life, a new theme. For these short-isodes, what can I say? Under the watchful eyes of Bob Stratos and Apollo, this is Elton Reads a Book a Week, the podcast guaranteed to be at least partially done most of the time. My name is Elton, and I read a book a week. This week is a short-isode about the United States with states' nicknames. I know I did the same kind of gag in the cold open, but what can I say? I'm a sucker for recycling my own terrible humor and writing and such. And as you'll find, that's a common theme in the nicknaming of states here in the good old United States of A. It's almost a tradition. And if I'm allowed to wax idiotic and political topical kind of thing for a moment, it's like one man's 240-ish year old Constitution is another man's toilet paper. But I digress. I got the idea for this book. For this episode from the book. I got the idea for this episode, short-isode, from the book Uncle John's Curiously Compelling Bathroom Reader by the Bathroom Readers Institute. It's a great series of books that I've pulled from before, and I would do a full episode on them, but they're basically anthologies of delightfully useless and fascinating information, and I'm too dumb currently to imagine how I would make that work as an episode altogether. So instead, I take inspiration from it, or whatever. I read the thing all the way. I have many times, and I pick something from it that I think might interest you. So you're welcome. This is my wife's pick, though. She picked it, pickled pepper. She picked it, the topic, that is. But, she's far more interesting than I am, so I'm guessing that you'll like this than the nonsense shit I had in mind. Enough of my dicking around, right? Where are those fucking state nicknames at? Stop yelling in your car, living room, jogging down. I want to say path. Jogging route? Path? Route? Something like that. I don't need the shouting, which is what I imagine you're doing. And neither do you. Relax. Breathe, and keep pace down the path route. State nicknames are basically America's national in-jokes, but also a state's in-joke. Double in-jokes. A mix of boosterism, slander, old gossip, and the occasional outright bullshit, as well as we'll find out later, racism. All frozen in time on license plates and tourist brochures and state college team names. Underneath the familiar Lone Star and Sunshine labels, there's a much stranger and often fucked up history running just underneath the surface. How did state nicknames become a thing? In the 1800s, back when alcohol was both a pastime and medical treatment, and opiates were freely given to children in cough medicine. And that is not a joke. I really, really, really wish it was. Nope. Back in the 1800s, actually 1849, there was a There was a cough syrup marketed by a pediatric nurse as a gentle, soothing solution for teething infants. This was perhaps one of the most infamous products of that time. It contained, you ready for this, 65 milligrams of morphine per fluid ounce, along with alcohol, cannabis, and chloroform. Mm-hmm. It was recommended to be given to infants as young as 1 month old, with a teaspoonful serving as, a fatal dose in many cases. Yeah, a teaspoonful. Its name? Mrs. Winslow's Soothing Syrup. That is not a joke. Yeah. Wow. So, sorry, I just got caught up in that, and I looked that up, and yeah, Mrs. Winslow's Soothing Syrup, brought to you by the makers of Death. So anyway, back when alcohol was both a pastime and medical treatment, and opiates were freely given to children in the form of Mrs. Winslow's soothing syrup. And nationally, murder occurred roughly every hour. Nationally, Americans love labels and mockery, often at the same time, often while murdering. Apparently, every hour. Yeah, I'm not sure about loving labels, but maybe they did. Maybe they did like labeling and mocking people, especially their neighbors in rival regions. So many nicknames started as insults, political slogans, or newspaper cliches, not official branding. Only later did the states decide, actually, that's kind of catchy. Let's forget about the problematic aspects and go with it anyway. Offended minorities be damned. Shall we elevate them to symbols of pride? Why, yes, we should. Not the minorities, the problematic catchphrase, nickname. That never, ever elevate minorities. To be clear, not all of the nicknames stem from racism, okay? Well, not that I know of anyway. I'm sure if you dig enough, you'll get there. When dealing with the history of the U.S., a disturbing amount of research roads lead to racism. Just saying. However, when looking into states' nicknames, 3 big sources keep showing up. Usually it's something like war and politics, Civil War regiments, campaign speeches, partisan cartoons. And then you have like things like commerce and industry, cotton, railroads, silver, fur, tobacco, stuff like that. And then tall tales and folklore, crafty traders, mysterious dialect words, and exaggerated geography are usually what helps a nickname come to be. Now let's get into the fun shit, that bizarre, controversial, and quietly odd fun shit that is states' nicknames. How about we start with Missouri, the show me state? Missouri's best known nickname almost certainly didn't come from a prevalence to flash your neighbors your genitals in lieu of waving hello, as you may have thought, or I thought. If you happen to be as disturbed as me, you may have thought that, but I'm sure you didn't, because you're a better person than I am. No, instead it began as a dig at supposedly slow or skeptical Missourians, to say it in a more nice way. And by slow, they mean, I mean, slow, like slow, but not slow, but the other slow. You know what I mean? Yeah, that one. Slow. In 1889, Congressman Willard Duncan Vandiver told a Philadelphia audience, "I am from Missouri. You have got to show me," contrasting himself with smooth talkers who relied on frothy eloquence. The phrase caught on in what started as a crack about needing extra explanation, leading into a Instead, they turned it into a virtue. Missourians recast it as a proud hard-headedness. We're not gullible. We want proof. It's a nice example of semantic judo, you know? Turn "you're slow" into "we're empirical," which is kind of the exact kind of semantic judo slow people think is effective. Let's move on to North Carolina, the Tar Heel state. Tar Heel probably came from the state's naval stores industry, tar, pitch, and turpentine, from pine forests. But its use for people is thornier. During and after the Civil War, the term appears to be an insult, as a backhanded compliment about soldiers who stuck to the battlefield, as if tar were on their heels. Some versions say it mocked poorer, working-class North Carolinians. Others insist it honored the troops' refusal to retreat or something. Either way, the state ended up embracing it, smoothing over the class and regional tensions that were wrapped up in the word. It's one of those nicknames where you can feel the argument still kind of humming under the surface, you know? Full disclosure, I'm pretty sure Tar Heel also meant slow, but not slow. You know, not slow, but you know, slow. This is one more like, huh? I mean, well, fucking why then? Like, you know, this next one is like, why? Like fucking why? Like, why would they? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't. You know what? Get them in here. Get everyone in the damn state. Line them up, and no, they have to explain it to me, and you, the listener. They have to explain it to us, okay, until it makes sense. Make it make sense, or something less dramatic than that. Connecticut, the Nutmeg State. Nutmegs are not a major Connecticut crop. Which is your first clue. Something odd is going on, right? The nickname comes from a long circulating legend that Yankee traders from Connecticut were so shrewd. They sold wooden nutmegs to unsuspecting customers, or as we would call them today, victims that were duped and had their money stolen. In one version, the joke is on the buyers, too clueless to know how real nutmegs are. Too clueless to know how hard real nutmegs are. Dumb, trusting customers. Why wouldn't they know they're getting ripped off by criminals? So stupid. In another version, the joke is on Connecticut peddlers. Clever to the point of fraud. Instead of going to jail, we'll just have a laugh at your expense. Justice served. So that's the state folksy nickname, preserved as an accusation of rustic con artistry. Exactly the kind of ambiguous morality tale 19th century Americans loved and were ripped off by a lot. Ain't America great? Now let's talk about the Hoosier state. Hoosier is one of the great unsolved American etymology puzzles. Theories range from a slurred frontier greeting, "Who's there? Who's there? Who's here?" Or it's who's here, not who's there. But fucking maybe, whatever. Who's here is what they think. It was like, who's here? Who's here? Here, Hoosier. Who's here? Like a fucking hillbilly or something. To an Old English dialect word for rough country people, akin to calling someone a hillbilly, or more like a poverty-stricken. Then there's the idea that it was used by riverboat crews for laborers, to talk about laborers from Indiana. Hey, you dirty Hoosier, pick up that heavy lumber and haul it over here. That dirty Hoosier doing labor for money. Laugh at the hard worker, everyone. Laugh. None of these definitions are universally accepted, because why would they be? They're all so much fun, making fun of destitute or Poor, hardworking people. What a choice. Either way, the nickname had strong overtones early on. Hoosier could suggest a rustic, unpolished, backcountry hillbilly slur of speech, like they can't talk right. Over time, like Yankee, it got domesticated into a warm, fuzzy identity word. A little self-deprecating, but mostly affectionate jab at the people it represented. Fucked up, right? Now we get to Minnesota, the Gopher State. Minnesota's official name is the North Star State, but Gopher State hangs on like, well, a weird burrowing field rodent would, if it was known for hanging on to things as well. Yeah. It doesn't come from actual gophers so much as from an 1858 political cartoon backing a controversial railroad bond scheme. In the cartoon, legislators were drawn as gophers, dragging a rail car, hinting that they were being pulled around by powerful interests. The image stuck, and the animal ended up outliving the scandal. 3 cheers for the sweet, sweet, sweet power of misunderstanding and animals' pulling power, politics, and silly cartooning. I do love a good cartoon, though. For real. So, a biting piece of political satire eventually became a benign animal nickname, stripped of its original critique. Now let's move on to Delaware, the Diamond State, and corporate capital. The popular story is that Thomas Jefferson supposedly called Delaware a jewel or diamond for its strategic location, despite its small size. Whether or not he actually said that Diamond State thing, it stuck as a flattering metaphor for small but valuable. In the 20th and 21st centuries, Delaware also picked up corporate capital and similar nicknames because so many companies incorporate there under its business-friendly laws, which they do in Delaware primarily for those laws being allowing a high level of corporate secrecy and allowing them to hide beneficial owners and to exploit tax loopholes and avoid state income tax on income earned elsewhere. Delaware's legal system, specifically the Court of Chancery, Chancery, Chancery. It provides unparalleled protection for company management against shareholder lawsuits. You can feel the shift from 18th century geopoetic flattery to 20th century pragmaticism and screwing over the little guy. Now, Alabama, Yellowhammer, the Yellowhammer State. This might be, I don't know, either the best or worst. Well, no, definitely not the worst, but also not as cool, but I don't know. Yellowhammer? I mean, while it might sound like the title for an excellent kung fu / blaxploitation movie, where the protagonist has a catchphrase like, "I'll chop you in the balls, fool," or "How about you sukiyaki my dick, bitch?" Or might sound like a very flashy and ill-colored tool, maybe, used by a hyper-masculine fashion designer. But it's actually a nickname for the northern flicker, a kind of woodpecker, which, to say the least, is pretty disappointing. I'd rather it be the protagonist, because I just keep thinking of catchphrases for that guy or gal. I'm not sexist. Could be anyone who says, "I'm about to monkey elbow strike your mama, bitch." Or "You just caught a palm strike to your baby batter bag, bitch." Why I always end those with bitch, I don't know. It's because I'm a child who thinks in angry, childish epithets, angry, childish, I think it sounds funny. The story the actual Yellowhammer story, traces to the Civil War, when an Alabama regiment wore uniforms with yellow trim that reminded people of the bird's yellow wing patches. Other soldiers started calling them Yellowhammers, and eventually the bird and the nickname were adopted proudly, with the Yellowhammer becoming the official state bird. I still like, I'll punch you in the dick, bitch. Hi-ya!
Elton, I'm gonna stop you right there. It's time for an ad. You know how it works. Pause, sucker. Oh, quick note, if you want the episodes ad-free, you can get those via the podcast Patreon page. Link in the show notes, or whatever they're called. All right, I'll stop now. Here are the ads.
Now, Nevada, the Silver State. It's more, and it's more cynical cousins. The Silver State is straightforward. Nevada boomed in the 19th century on silver mining, and the metal still looms large in its identity. But historically, it also picked up names like Casino State and Sagebrush State, which point to two very different Nevadas. The neon-lit world of legalized gambling, the mob, and anonymous bodies found in the desert, and sparsely populated desert landscapes dominated by sagebrush, and anonymous bodies found in the desert. It's a reminder that nicknames can compete, each focusing on a different economic or cultural slice of the same place, but also refer to anonymous dead bodies found in the desert. Now let's get into the strange, forgotten, and slightly disturbing alternates. The official nickname, is often just a survivor of a whole ecosystem of weirder options. Kentucky has been the Bluegrass State for generations, but older labels included the Corncracker State and, my favorite, the Dark and Bloody Ground. The latter, of course, referring to violent conflicts between native nations, Creek, Shawnee, Chickasaw, Cherokee, before the U.S. settlement. And I'm guessing probably very much afterwards. I'm just, speculating here. Probably afterwards, too. These older nicknames hint at history's class stereotypes, frontier violence, that the modern tourism-friendly nickname kind of just slips but glides past. It's like, don't look over there. Bluegrass, that's what we're all about. Nebraska used to be the Tree Planters State, a reference to Arbor Day before Cornhusker State, and the more boorish slogans like the Good Life, which if you've ever seen Nebraska is, that's just a lie. I'm kidding, of course. I've driven through the state, but never hung out because I was afraid I might kill myself. I'm kidding. Sorry, Nebraska folks. I'm just kidding. Still, those nicknames took center stage, the Tree Planter State and all that. Tree Planters reflects on a time when actively changing the landscape, literally planning the future, was the brand. Can you imagine a time when doing right by the environment was a popular thing? Oh, how the times have changed, am I right? Burn it all! Alaska collected mocking epithets in Congress when the U.S. debated buying it. Seward's Folly is a famous one. There's Seward's Icebox, Icebergia, Walrussia, Johnson's Polar Bear Garden, and my favorite, America's Frozen Deathscape, where the human spirit is stripped from men and freezing is seen as the sweet release from the hell that is Alaska. Or I 100% made that last one up. Those other ones were before that were very real satirical nicknames, capturing skepticism that the frozen territory was worth the price of fucking nothing. It was the last frontier. The last frontier, though, which it is now, is the proud modern moniker, and is basically a reply to that early ridicule. We're the last frontier, not Icebergia, bastards. Seward's Icebox, suck our last frontier dick. But that roughed up my throat a little bit. You can see how memory gets curated, Keep the romance, drop the embarrassment, bury the violence deep within yourself until it comes up maybe at a bar somewhere, and you just want to fight. You just want to fight and just get it out and release that poison, release it through your fist into someone's face because you know no one loves you enough to hug you. When nicknames collide and evolve, many states cycle through nicknames, or maintain an official one alongside stubborn rivals. New Mexico once leaned into Sunshine State before Florida walked over to New Mexico, slapped it hard across the face, said mine, and made Sunshine its brand, and pushed the label even harder. Georgia is now comfortably the peach state, but Goober State, from Goober, the peanut, appeared in older sources, a name that sounds too close to goofy for modern branding comfort. Or Disney sued. Like they went to court and the judge said, Georgia, unless you can prove without a shadow of a doubt that you have talking and walking dogs that wear clothes and befriend talking and walking mice, I think we both know you're losing. Can you, Georgia? Can you? I think not. Verdict rendered. Or something like that. I don't know. I really don't know how courts work. I honestly don't. Louisiana juggles Pelican State with promotional tags like Sportsman's Paradise, which, come on. I mean, Mardi Gras right there. Anyway, each aimed at a slightly different story, natural symbol versus tourist pitch. I mean, fucking really. Nicknames are political, and you can almost watch chambers of commerce and tourism bureaus editing the state's personality in real time. I mean, under the folksiness, you can read 3 deeper patterns, okay? Who gets to define the state, really? Many nicknames began in coastal newspapers, political speeches or rival regions, making jokes like assholes. When states, I really like doing, when states adopt their labels, they're accepting and writing and sometimes rewriting outside judgment. Bluegrass State, Volunteer State, they foreground pastoral landscapes, much like the Arrest and its end of world stuff, and noble service, dark and bloody ground, or old pejorative, class nicknames point to history that maybe they won't want to fucking remember, and then sometimes they turn mockery into myth, like Show Me and Tar Heel, Nutmeg, and Gopher. Ugh. If you zoom, if you step back, the nicknames read like a shitty diary, of American self-reimagination, but it's a running record of what people thought was kind of worth bragging about, or maybe making fun of, shit like that. Now I'd like to talk about the state I grew up in and its nickname. The Sooners, the Oklahoma Sooners, Sooner State, the Sooner State. Man, oh man. It all goes back to the land run of 1889. And this is going to sound terrible, by the way, just so you know. Sooners are cheaters. They are cheaters that were involved in the land run of 1889. Basically, there was a starting pistol, people ran out or took their wagons or whatever, horseback, ran out to claim land, which, long story short, was not theirs. Was not theirs at all, and then wasn't theirs again and again and again. But you know what? That has never stopped certain people, racists, in particular, that never stopped them before. Hopefully it stops them now, but I mean, back then, no. So to understand the land run of 1889, the gunfighting, horse galloping, racism spectacle that gave us the word Sooners, you have to back up roughly 60 years from there and follow oh boy, a terrible games of. You got to follow up on terrible games of just asshole games of legal bait and switch and just one of the worst times in American history, because the land that settlers raced to claim didn't just appear out of nowhere. No, it was taken repeatedly with paperwork. After the American Revolution, the United States inherited Britain's headache. And what was that headache? It was what to do about the Native American nations. And more importantly, the people that occupied that land that, white people wanted. The early federal government's answer was to draw a line, literally the proclamation line, a concept that carried forward later. And essentially everything west of here is yours forever. Native Americans, beyond the proclamation line, it's always yours forever. And, forever would prove to be more of an idea, not necessarily a concrete timeline. More like a loose concept of an idea, of a timeline. You see, well, okay, by the 1820s, pressure from southern states, especially Georgia, the Peach State, the Goober State of Georgia. By the 1820s, places like Georgia had made that line politically untenable. See, cotton was king. The soil in the southeast was rich, and the Cherokee, Choctaw, and Chickasaw and Creek, or back then they were called the Muskogee, and the Seminole nations happened to be sitting right on top of it. These weren't nomadic peoples either, by the way. Many had adopted European-style farming, written constitutions, and in the Cherokees' case, their own alphabet. But, when white people want land, none of that matters. No, in 1830, Congress passed the Indian Removal Act, and President Andrew Jackson signed it with gusto. The pitch to the public was almost laughably, laugh out loud cynical. Removal would, get ready for this, protect the native peoples from the pressures of white civilization. We are here to protect you from us. In exchange for their ancestral homelands in the southeast, the 5 civilized tribes, as they were called, would receive new land west of the Mississippi, specifically most of present-day Oklahoma, forever. In perpetuity. That means, forever. Just so you know, in perpetuity, it's going to come up a lot. And it's going to mean jack shit every single time. What followed was the Trail of Tears. That's the Cherokee alone lost somewhere between 4,000 and 8,000 people, a quarter of their entire nation, on the forced march west in 1838 and 1839. How fucking horrific is that? The other tribes suffered much the same. They arrived in Indian Territory absolutely traumatized, grieving, and starting from nothing. But they rebuilt. They reestablished their governments, their schools, their farms, all of that. And by the mid-19th century, Indian Territory was a functioning, self-governing collection of nations, of native nations. And then the Civil War happened. The war about slavery. And then here's where the shit for the Native Americans, the American Indians, really starts hitting the fan. Like their shit starts hitting the fan, and this flopping turd on top of turd. The 5 tribes had complicated relationships with the Confederacy. Some tribal leaders had actually held enslaved people. And the Confederacy actively courted their alliance. Some tribes signed treaties with the Confederate government, which the United States would later use as a pretext for a fresh round of land seizures. You see, after the war, the federal government called the tribes to Fort Smith in 1865 and essentially said, guys, you picked the wrong side. And this was even the ones who hadn't. So guys, You're all going to pay. Even the ones who didn't pick a side or had chosen the Union side, they're all going to pay. The Reconstruction Treaties of 1866 forced the tribes to do several things that would haunt them for generations. They had to free enslaved people and grant them citizenship, a genuinely just requirement. No one should be enslaved. But they also had to cede the western half of Indian Territory to the federal government to be used for relocating other tribes from around the country. And they had to allow railroads to cut through their land. That western cession of land, ceding of land, it's the beginning of the end. Through the 1860s and 70s, the Plain Wars were raging. The U.S. Army was systematically destroying buffalo herds and the way of life of nations like the Comanche, Kiowa, Cheyenne, Arapaho, and dozens of others. When military defeat came, it was engineered to come. Those tribes needed somewhere to go. The federal government's answer was the western half of Indian Territory, the land the 5 tribes had been forced to give up. So reservation after reservation was carved out and assigned. The Osage got a tract, the Pawnee, the Sac, and Fox. The Sac and Fox, the Cheyenne and Arapaho, the Ponca, the Kiowa, Comanche. By the late 1870s, Indian Territory was getting very crowded, and deliberately so. Because in the middle of all those assigned reservations, there was a tract of about 2 million acres that was assigned to the Creek and Seminole nations under the 1866 treaties as a future home for the tribes that never actually came. It had been paid for, it had been ceded, and it was sitting there, legally unoccupied. That tract became known as the unassigned lands, and it was about to become the most coveted real estate in America. By the 1870s, a cattle rancher and agitator named David Payne had noticed what everyone else had noticed. 2 million acres of some of the best farmland in North America sitting legally empty in the middle of the continent. Payne organized a movement of settlers called boomers, people who wanted to boom the opening of the land, and began leading illegal incursions into Indian Territory. He was arrested repeatedly and escorted out repeatedly and kept coming back. He died in 1884, but his movement didn't. The railroads, meanwhile, were lobbying Congress hard. They had lines running through Indian Territory and desperately wanted population density that settlement would bring. The cattle ranchers who had been leasing Indian land for grazing were suddenly vulnerable as Congress made these leases illegal in 1885 in order the land cleared. Pressure was building from every direction. Then came the Dawes Act. In 1887, Congress passed what might be the single most destructive piece of legislation in the history of Native land rights, the Dawes Severalty Act. Up until this point, Native nations held their land communally. The tribe owned the territory, not individual members. The Dawes Act said that was going to change. Tribal land would be broken up into individual allotments, 160 acres per head of household, smaller amounts for others, and whatever was quote-unquote left over after every tribal member got their allotment would be declared surplus and open to white settlement. The stated purpose was to make Native Americans into individual farmers and American citizens. Yay! The actual effect was a land grab of staggering proportions. Native land holdings in the United States dropped from roughly 138 million acres in 1887 to about 48 million acres by 1934. The Dawes Act is why. The 5 civilized tribes were initially exempt from the Dawes Act. Their land rights were still protected by treaty, but that exemption would evaporate soon enough. For now, the unassigned lands remain the focus. And then on March 2nd, 1889, President Grover Cleveland signed the Indian Appropriations Act, which included a rider authorizing the president to open the unassigned lands to settlement. On March 23rd, President Benjamin Harrison, Cleveland, he lost the 1888 election. Oh, poor Cleveland. He proclaimed President Benjamin Harrison. He proclaimed that at noon on April 22nd, 1889, the 2 million acres of unassigned land will be open. First come, first serve. On that morning, an estimated 50,000 people lined up at the borders of the territory, waiting for the bugle call. At noon, they surged in. By nightfall, the tent cities of Guthrie and Oklahoma City each had populations in the thousands. It was chaos, and it was exhilarating, and it was completely dependent on the accumulated betrayals of the United States government, but white folks on Native Americans, the accumulation of those betrayals of the previous 60 years. And the Sooners, they were the ones who snuck in before the gun, who crossed the line sooner than they were legally allowed to, hiding in creek beds and ravines, waiting to pop up and claim the best spots. They were the cheaters in a race that was itself predicated on theft. The name became, ridiculous and fucked up as this is, a badge of pride. And then the 1889 run was just the first of several. More runs followed in 1891, 92, 93. The famous Cherokee Strip Run, the largest, 1895 and 1901. The 5 civilized tribes exemption from Dawes was revoked in 1898 with the Curtis Act, which dissolved tribal governments and forced allotment on them too. By the time Oklahoma achieved statehood in 1907, the Native nations had been promised permanent homelands in perpetuity and have been reduced to a fraction of what they'd held. Stripped through every treaty, war, legislation, and a legal system that rewrote the rules every time Native people figured out how to work within them. The land run is a fucked up story. It is a stain on American history. Just a horrific time. So that's where the Sooner State, the celebration of cheaters in a race that was itself predicated on a theft because of racism. Cool shit, huh? Yeah. Thank you for listening to Elton Reads a Book a Week. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider joining the Patreon. It's $4 a month, and you get extra podcasts, and you get custom artwork and no ads, and you get the episodes early, and all kinds of stuff. You get to watch me do live streams of writing the episodes and recording them, and access to special parts of the Discord. And you can join my Discord server. The link's going to be in the description. You can do that too. That'd be great. Or you can just join it and be in the free part, which is fine too. I don't mind that at all. Just come in and yell at me or whatever. I'm in there all the time. More or less. I have it open right now. Anyway, and if you, it's a very rough time with all these fucking prices going crazy. You can just share the podcast or rate and review it, or, pass it down the road, put it on Facebook or Threads or whatever you hang out in, fucking Snapchat. You can throw it in there. And then you can follow this podcast on all the social media stuff. I got a Snapchat for this, and I got a TikTok that I put stuff up on, and I got an Instagram and Facebook. I have Facebook too, so you can do all that too. And then, my God, something with my voice. My voice is going to shit. And you can follow me on there, and I'll give you updates and all kinds of goodies and stuff. I put artwork up there every once in a while and things like that. And if you want to listen to me do other stuff as far as podcasting goes, and you don't want to get in on the Patreon, or maybe you are in on the Patreon and you just want to hear me do different stuff, I do a podcast called 2 Books, 1 Cup with a bunch of podcasting friends of mine. They are really, really, really funny. We do a comparison, I guess, debate show where we take 2 books and we debate or 2 things, 2 concepts, 2 whatever. And we debate them until we figure out which one is just better. And then whoever wins gets a cup. You have to listen to really to find out what that is. And with that same group, in that same podcast, we also do D&D episodes where we all play characters. And mine is named Eltro Lector Librorum, I believe, is what I made up. It means Elton the Reader in Latin, just so you know. Yay! So now you have a nice in-joke for when you go and listen to it. It's called 2 Books, 1 Cup. And, just like and share the podcast wherever you see it, or share it online to people who you might think might like it. You do that, rate and review it. It's really easy on Spotify. You just hit 5 stars and give me 5 stars. I love 5 stars. They're the best stars. And, look, above all else, thank you for listening. I really appreciate it. Thank you so very much for listening to this. And you should definitely read a book this week. Don't let them die out. That'd be a terrible thing if that happened. So thank you. Thank you so much. All right. You have a wonderful day, night, whenever you're listening to this. And thank you again. Okay. Bye now. Bye.
And Elton reads a book a week. And